you don't have enough area. You have to remove the amount of, the square footage for the road that was in there, that can't be counted as land for development, or are we under some special rules here?
The planning board approved the project.
The planning board says they never saw this. Now, I've got several of the members, and they say they don't know, so I'm asking you guys how it happens. You don't have enough land to do what you wanna do up there, or do everything that you think you wanna do. I wanna know how you can do it. You've got a road in here that's using up damn near half an acre, you don't show the second road that leads out to School Street, which needs to be taken out of that equation. You can't give 5,000 square feet to a building when it requires 10. The planning board doesn't have that authority.
Alan, please.
The entire parcel is being leased. It's all owned by the town. The town retains the right to occupy the two buildings that are, well, the police station and the Estabrook building. And the town, the only thing that the Batemans can develop pursuant to the lease is the school premises. That area around the original school building, that is.
What's highlighted in green?
And that's highlighted in green.
You're gonna put,
Can you let me finish off?
Excuse me, Oscar.
Thank you.
I will,
Excuse me.
So that is what they can develop. The rest of the land is part of the lease because the planning board, in its review, determined that all that acreage was needed in order for there to be a proposal for, how many units?
34 units.
34 units. So that's what it is. The town owns the entire lease. There's no reason, because the town is gonna occupy the police building, to hold back a 10,000 square foot. There's no reason for that to be part of what the town is excluding. They own the whole parcel, so therefore, that remains as one piece. It's gonna continue to be utilized, having multiple buildings like properties do in town. So there's really no problem with just retaining the rights to the building. But what we've gone beyond what was in the original lease is that we have the right and retain the rights to utilize some of the land around the two buildings for passive recreation use. If the Estabrook building gets torn down, you wanna put a soccer field up there, the town's within their rights to do that. The town wants to rebuild the police station as long as it's within the same footprint, and I doubt you'd ever need a police station that big if you had it built in the future, that the town has the right to do that as well. So I just wanna make that clarification for, in terms of the lease.
Thank you.
I respectfully, don't agree with you, sir. You're circumventing the subdivision regulations deliberately. And it's not a precedent this town should be setting. Okay?
Excuse me, Oscar, he's not circumventing anything. This is
Yes,
from
he
the
is.
planning board.
All right. Why isn't the,
He explained that to you.
hmm?
He explained it to you. This was from the planning board.
No. All right, let's call some planning board members up and have them tell me. Sure. All right. Where is the copy of the deed that we're conveying to these gentlemen? Why isn't that for public inspection?
I just did not provide it for reconveyance. I was under the impression that we were concerned about the ground lease. I've heard tonight that some folks would like to see the conveyance agreement. Put it on the website in the 3 locations that I presently have. I will have it available for you at the open town meeting, so you can review that and ask your additional questions at
Keith, why do you keep putting it on? Why can't we have it now and look at it and have a chance to study it before town meeting? Okay, where's the agreement for the public to look at, where you've agreed to let these guys work on this building?
as part of the option agreement that we already signed.
Where is that? Why isn't it available to the public? You forgot that too. Keith, it just doesn't look good. You know, why do you want to inform the townspeople of what's going on? And give them an opportunity to review this stuff before the deadline? All right, one last thing. I have a whole bunch of things, but I'll let them ask. I don't want to use up all the time. 4 weeks ago, I brought to Keith's attention the fact that Brian can't go over here.
Hold on, no, we're only discussing this matter at this point.
No, you have to put up me,
Okay.
thank you.
On article number 3, I was wondering if you could give me some clarification because it seems very open-ended. Shall the selectmen for the town of Berwick be authorized to enter into a long-term lease agreement and related documents? I have no idea what that means. Does that mean that if you have to deed over again, that you can? If this was to be voted through? For the leasing of the old Berwick High School and surrounding grounds on School Street with Sullivan School Associates or a related entity. I have no idea who that is. I have no idea what kind of documents you're going to be giving out. It seems very open-ended, and it gives the power pretty much to the board to make the decision. I'd kind of like to know what kind of power that is before I even try to make a decision on the vote. Secondly, I would like to say, yes, grant money is out there, but it's not free. Everybody here pays for it. And the next thing is, I would hope that anybody who is excited about this project, I understand it's a good thing for us, I understand the mess that's over there, but I would really hope that anybody who may or may not have an indirect dealing with that sometime in the future would solemnly abstain from voting on anything or speaking of it. Thank you.
Alan, answer.
Yeah, I just wanted,
You can't answer this related document.
yeah, I just wanted to say, because, since I was the one that helped draft the language, I think I should try to explain why I was there. There are two financing entities involved in this transaction. One is Maine State Housing, the other is Bangor Savings Bank. There's a fair amount of money involved in these loans, and we're talking about millions of dollars. Anybody who's been through a commercial loan transaction knows that there are oftentimes documents that get created that have to be signed. I found out about one of them this morning, so that's the reason why we had to have related documents in there, because we can't say exactly, what is it going to be, and that's why you're appointed as selectman or elected as selectman, because there has to be some decision-making involved in this process. But I think it's very appropriate for you to get the authority to sign a lease, but also have the authority to sign the related documents. As far as the entity's concerned, in any commercial transaction, the Batemans have a lot of different businesses going. They don't necessarily know, they probably know now, but we just wanted to make sure we have the flexibility of giving them the option of creating an entity that, I think they've already created a single-purpose entity for this development, but just again, in an exercise of precaution, just kind of left that open-ended. But it's obvious who the people are. It's going to be these gentlemen, and I think we do know what the name of the entity is going to be now. I was very sure at the time that we drafted this.
Peter Perry. I have a couple of questions. One question that I'd like to know is, the gentleman never identified himself, and I'm just curious what his name is. That's an inappropriate pass now.
David Rodriguez. My name's David Rodriguez.
Thanks. One thing about this sketch here, I don't think the planning board probably ever did see this during their discussions, because this sketch is dated 7/20/2011, which was about a month ago. And this was approved by the planning board about 2 years ago. So they never saw this. I wasn't on the planning board at the time, it was during my hiatus, but I did go to almost every meeting that this project was discussed by the planning board. So I did pay a little attention to it. I assume that on this sketch that we see, the whole colored line is the whole parcel that the town actually owns. There's no other land associated with it, I don't think. And another thing too is that the density calculation was based upon supposedly from this whole gross area minus of any of the wetlands, and there are some substantial wetlands up there, minus right-of-ways and all of that stuff. So the drawing is not really accurate into what the planning board probably originally looked at and voted on, and where the density calculations came from. I also there should be 10,000 acres, 10,000 square feet designated for the police station, because that is what the lease ordinance talks about for density for each building. But that aside, my original questions before my interest got peaked about that was, this process started about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. It wasn't very transparent at the beginning, and I think it was somewhat poorly managed all through the whole process. And that's why now, 3 years later, we're kind of at this dilemma. But I'm curious, originally, I'm curious as to was the money that originally was going to be applied for this project, there was talk about a 9% and a 4%, I think, money. Whether that was part of the money package that is currently being used to invest. So the original monies were those monies that we're talking about. Because originally, when the money was applied for, an application was submitted, it was deficient in some line items, so the project dragged on even longer. But we're still talking the same package of money. The original funding that was being requested is what is currently on the table. Okay. One other line item that I'm curious about, and it's the transfer of the deed for the property. If I understood the meeting we had about the brownfield, that basically you're looking for the $50,000 in loans, and that's what the transfer of the deeds were. And we're talking about $450,000 in remediation money total. It's kind of hard for me to believe that we're going through such a contorted, strenuous process to do $50,000.
I would love to answer that question. That's how financially thin this project is. It took us 3 years through planning to work through the Maine State Housing Authority's 9% tax credit program. We went through 3 funding rounds before this project was selected. It's highly competitive. This project has been a very difficult project to bring to market. That's why the school has sat vacant for this period of time. We are really talking about $50,000 being the make or break in this project when we're dealing with $450,000 of unknown environmental costs that we were faced with about 4 months ago that came to light at this point in time. That's really how financially thin these projects are to make work. And on the flip side is, with that, it makes this a very viable project that can have a school that sat vacant for this period of time become a vibrant piece of this community. That is how important it is. Trust me, if we didn't need to go after that additional $50,000 of fund and go through this process and have you good townspeople come out and hear this process, we wouldn't do it.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Any other? Okay, I'll move to Article 3. Or is there anything?
No, I think that you have to take a motion in a second to,
Oh, okay.
to sign the warrant for the special town meeting, scheduled for the 24th.
Do we have a chance to ask
Joe,
a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Joe, somebody has their hand up.
I'd like to ask Alan first. Alan, you mentioned the Estabrook School, and you said if we tore it down, it could be used for soccer field. If we tore it down, can we not use the same size for another building?
That's right, that's right. You know, if for some reason, right now, we're talking about a long period of time that this property is in lease, but we retain the rights to rebuild on the Estabrook site if you wanted to tear that building down and build something else. It can't be any bigger than the existing footprint.
Yeah, I
But you
understand.
have the right to do that, yes,
We have retained that right.
yes.
Okay, and I got one other one. And I think I've asked this before, and I never got the answer that I really wanted. I realized that they have done these before. South Berwick has just done a deed for the library to the developer or whoever, and I have no idea who's doing it. But as I studied that, all the ones that I found have been done to nonprofit organizations. The library in South Berwick, the deed was given to the Friends of the Library because they are a 501(c)(3). They're a nonprofit. But the town is not a nonprofit organization, are we?
No. it's hard to, you know, that's, I'm sure, a much different kind of transaction when you're talking about a library being given to a nonprofit that's gonna operate it, as opposed to a redevelopment like what happened here.
Well,
So
and I think, and I thought I put in this notebook, but I think Keith gave us 2 or 3 examples, am I right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
gave
but
you
they were-
examples in
but
Kennybunk.
Yeah,
with
they
the-
were all to nonprofits.
Right, I give you an example in Kennybunk, and I give you an example in Brewer for Eastern Fine Paper.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that were provided to me.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a procedural question, Jim?
Yes,
I'm just confused. I guess I thought you were gonna do the 2 articles separately. So I didn't ask, I have a question about Article 3. Some people spoke about both, but it was my impression you read the article and you spoke about that. Are you not gonna do Article 3, or are you just moving on?
I thought that's what we were gonna do, but.
Yeah, if you'd like, you know, if people have questions specifically on Article 3, then I would certainly allow them to voice their questions.
Okay, then I'll read Article 3.
Sure.
Article 3, shall the selectmen of the town of Berwick be authorized to enter a long-term lease agreement and related documents for the leasing of the old Berwick High School and surrounding grounds on School Street with Sullivan School Associates LP or a related entity upon terms and conditions that the selectmen deem to be in the town's best interest and which may be required by the financing sources for the construction of affordable housing units on this site. Mr. Brewer.
Peg Wheeler. I would just like to reiterate most of what everybody said on Article 2, because I think the project has felt like it lacked transparency from the start. It feels like it's been riddled with errors and problems all along. And the second article, I agree with everybody. I just think it seems like for $50,000, there's an easier way to do this without risking the town's well-being. But for Article 3, I think it's a really uncomfortable place to be, to include the deeding of the police station for that length of time. And Eleanor, your question is concerning to me. What if we decide we wanna do something there? What if you decide you wanna do something different with the community center? Are we now in the position of having to ask somebody else what we can do there? And just in general, what if you wanted to change the footprint of that building? It leaves us in an uncomfortable position. And my last question is, for those 99 years, where are all those people gonna be? You've got potentially how many people in that building who are going to recreate, have barbecues, sit in their lounge chairs, or put a bicycle where? I think the question about how that happened through the planning board is a good one. And I think there are a lot of questions about how that happened, but from the point of view of Cumberland Farms, on the corner of School Street, I just would love to know where all those people are gonna hang out in the police department parking lot. That's my question for the long term.
In the back, new article.
In the back, come into the front.
All right, specific to Article 3, I'm just wondering, in the event Article 2 fails, does Article 3 give you the authority to execute and convey the deed? Because that could be construed as a related document to the lease. So, I guess, are these carefully and craftily worded so if one fails, the other one still gets you where you wanna be? And then, I'll just leave you with, I spoke with Keith briefly about the insurance on the lease. $3 million is not enough for, and you know, you've been in the business, $3 million is what guys like you and I carry. That building completely developed will have a far higher value if something were to occur there. I think there should be a $10 million policy with the town named as additional insureds.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want me to answer the
Yes,
question, but,
please.
you know,
If you can.
Okay, if Article 3 doesn't pass, then the selectmen don't have the authority to do the lease, so I'm sure that the Batemans are not gonna be interested in doing any remediation for a building that they're not gonna be able to lease afterwards. So both articles have to pass for this project to go forward. And I think the $3 million, I can check, but I think that's for liability insurance. I don't believe that's fire insurance. That'll be based on what the value of the building is, and they have to have adequate homeowners coverage for that building.
That didn't answer the question. Thank you.
Was there someone way in the back that had their hand up?
I did. I was gonna say, he just did not answer his question.
In the back, hasn't spoken yet.
Dave Smokey. I just want an absolute clarification on what the development premises is. It's not the school premises, it's not the police department or community center, it's absolutely everything else on the lot. And that's part of their lease. The total lease says 10.03 acres, which includes the police station, and the community center. So when the arrows on Schedule B point to the police parking lot and the acreage behind the police station, that encompasses the whole perimeter, is that correct?
Yes.
So, just to clarify, if the community center was to ever do anything and we wanted to build a little addition on it, would we have to get permission from the lessee?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Well, I mean, you have to get permission from the planning board, you have a lot coverage. I mean, I'm not exactly sure all the development limitations on the lot. But we would have to stay within the footprint. I understand it to be a pretty large footprint. Those buildings are.
Yeah, but the existing footprint, we cannot go outside the existing footprint on our own property.
That's correct.
Is there any way on Article 3, I get all the way down to upon terms and conditions that the selectmen deem to be in the town's best interest. And I'm a little shaky there, putting it in your hands because I know it's gonna be behind closed doors and we don't get to hear it. Is there any way you can put in there that it's in front of us at like a public hearing type of thing, so you can get our input before you make a decision for it? Thank you.
Alan?
So I think a lot of municipal lawyers who come to a forum like this, you get to see what the words that we lawyers use end up, how they're being interpreted by people. And fairly, I mean, I understand people feeling like that gives you a big opening to do whatever you want. The lease that is going to be executed by the town is there. I mean, the reason why we put in just language to give you the authority to change it is if something came up that needed to be changed, then it gives you the authority to do it. And we've already seen that these things have come up, but this lease has been pretty well reviewed. And that is, so people should understand that that lease and the one that's been circulated is the lease that's gonna be executed by the town. There may be some minor modifications to it if something comes up in the financing process, but that's unlikely. But if we put that it's gonna be this lease and nothing else, and there had to be one word changed, you can't sign the lease. If the town authority just gives you the right to execute this lease as Exhibit A by its exact terms. So that's why there's a little bit of leeway given into the language. But I think people should understand that that lease that is being circulated here is the lease that is going to be the one that's going to be executed. And it might be in a matter of weeks. If the remediation gets done in a matter of weeks, next thing that happens, the lease gets executed and, then the project is moving forward.
This man hasn't spoken. Arthur, I'll get you.
Oh, Joe French. What he just said, that kind of disturbs me. Because he said the lease is in place, but you guys would have the authority, if it was in the best interest of Berwick, to change it or change the word and stuff. I don't think that's right with you guys' track record. I think it should all be brought in front of the public no matter what. No matter if they have to change one word, bring it before the public. Because what's been going on here, you can't really trust the town. They're not doing the best interest of Berwick. All you say.
Someone who hasn't spoken. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
George Murphy, 27 Tower Lane. Just a clarification on the question Mr. Levine had asked. He had asked if Article 2 was to fail, would Article 3 allow the board to continue on with the business at hand? I don't believe Mr. Shepherd answered that.
You went over there.
There he is. In the way that I understood that. So do you think if Article 2 fails and Article 3 passes, would Article 3 allow the board to continue on?
I thought I thought Mr. Levine asked another question. I thought he said if Article 3 failed. But either way, my understanding is both articles have to pass in order for the project to go forward. These gentlemen, Article 2 has to pass in order for the mediation to happen, and Article 3 has to pass in order for there to be a lease that's more than 75 years. If either of those gets defeated, the project doesn't go forward and the town owns the property with the existing environmental issues. Both have to pass.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're getting a second round, so we're gonna wrap this a little bit. Let's start over here, and then I'll go right through. Go ahead.
Okay.
First.
I'm gonna hurry. With all due respect to Alan, you haven't sat through the meetings that this group of people have been sitting through. So the questions that Tom's asking, and that Joe just asked, and that Dave just asked, these things appear to be worded in such a way to offer a lot of flexibility. We've seen it. We've seen it here. So although you can tell us, that's just normal wording, so that if something needs to be changed, it can. Our fear is that it will be. That if we say, we don't like that deed transfer, but we understand, that, or somebody may, I'm really not in favor of the project because it's been such a disaster from my perspective. And there's been a lack of transparency, but it certainly looks, by the way that's worded with, as Jeanette noted, whatever documents, whatever the board thinks is in our best interest. When we read that, it certainly looks as though it offers you the ability in either A or B to have both A and B. There just needs to be a C, all of the above. So I understand your perspective or Alan's perspective, but I think these could be worded to tighten them up so that people had confidence that what they're voting for really was what they're voting for, not that either one offered the opportunity to do the one that doesn't pass if one doesn't.
Well, if we vote on this tonight, it's gonna be what you see, period.
Well, I guess there are a lot of us who aren't comfortable with that.
Barry?
Yeah, Peter Perry. I just have, actually a quick question that Alan made a comment about. And that's if say the old school gets torn down, not high school, but the old school building, Estabrook building gets torn down. I may be mistaken, but I think unless that, whatever is put there, if it's anything but another school building, it should be the same use then. You could put it on